Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, and the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Get off of Twitter. Nearing 600 fully paid members there. That means they have access to all of the channels, communicate with each other, communicate with us, get all the latest information first. Check it out at Off the Floor. The link is right here in the description on the podcast feed and on the YouTube channel. Also, check out Valvoline. This is a new sponsor of ours. We got a great coupon for you. This episode is sponsored by Valvoline Instant Oil Change. With oil changes complete in about 15 minutes, maintaining your vehicle is just a quick stop on the way to your summer destinations. Click the link in our bio, or actually in our description, to receive a coupon that saves $8 off Valvoline full service conventional oil change, or $10 off full service, full synthetic, or diesel oil change. See, we're killing inflation just by ourselves. Check it out. Valvoline. They also got additional services available there. And again, you can find the link right here in the description. And now, today's episode.
Down to Biscayne. Yikes. Five on the floor. Ride for my dogs. Where here's the thing. You can check the score. Hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs. Just like Butler said, you in trouble, y'all. Kept the floor playing. Got it all banned. Y'all seen the block. Stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, it's power, have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, and Alex Toledo, plus others from the Five Reasons Sports Network.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. I'm going to try to get my earbud in here. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick at Five Reasons Sports. We've got Greg Sylvander. You can follow him at Greg Sylvander. I'm going to go a little off topic today. We were going to talk about Jaquez and playing in Summer League, but we'll cover that when he actually plays. That's going to be happening in Vegas. I'm a little surprised, actually. I did not think he would compete, but he's there anyway. He was there for the select team, so get him the reps. And the other thing that was interesting was I wanted you to address this before we get to the main topic today. They pulled the qualifying offers from Alondas Williams and Cole Swider. What do we read into that? Because we've talked about both guys.
That's just a bit of housekeeping. I think that those qualifying offers were extended because they wanted to keep them in the program, but now they're no longer necessary. I think that they've landed on their two-way guys, and probably they didn't want those qualifying offers to be accepted because it could take them over the apron to some degree. That's how I read into that. But I don't know the specifics of two-way contracts in terms of what those qualifying offers secure for that player. So for me, it seemed like bookkeeping.
Yeah, and look, we've talked about it. Alondas has a little bit of an uphill climb here because he's a scorer, but for their role players, they don't really look for scorers. They look for guys who kind of plug in the gaps. And he looked better in the third game when more of the other players were out. I'm curious what he looks like when more of the better players are in. And with Swider, I mean, they just drafted a shooter, so he hasn't shot much or well to this point in Larson, but it's part of what he does. So I don't know what Swider's situation is going to be with him going forward. We're going to touch on this today, though, because this has been a consistent issue this offseason, okay? Other than people just not listening to us when we've tried to explain that there was not a lot that the Heat could or would do at this stage. One of the problems that the Heat seem to be having is the public relations battle. And a lot of that, I think even some inside the organization would acknowledge, is their fault because they don't engage in a lot of the stuff that other teams engage in. And so what ends up happening is when there's an information vacuum, others fill it. Agents fill it, executives fill it. Everybody's got an angle, an agenda. In some cases, a reporter just wants to get something out before someone else, even though, again, it may not have 99 or even 85% of the story. And this happened again today. And first thing, I want to make it very clear, okay? I think Bobby Marks is excellent. I've known Bobby for a while. He's one of the better people that they have at ESPN. He's not one of these guys who just throws bombs for the sake of it. He worked in an organization. He worked for the Nets for a very long time. And obviously he's known to a lot of people from podcasts and other platforms, and he knows the cap as well as anybody. I do believe the Heat have respect for him. You see him in a lot of Heat games. I've sat next to him at Heat games. He actually, I think, lives on the other coast of Florida. So he's at the arena from time to time. But he had a report today that was just immediately shot down by people at the Heat to me. And like this has been a consistent thing this summer. And I know that Heat fans have taken this posture with me in particular that like I'm doing the bidding of the organization by shooting down all these reports. And I keep saying, like, it does not benefit me to shoot down reports. We get more clicks, more downloads, make more money when there's life to the reports than when there isn't. And honestly, the Heat would seem to benefit from some of these reports actually being true because it would get some of the fans off their back, the fans who think that they're not doing anything or haven't been looking to do anything. Well, if you were the organization, then why wouldn't you want that stuff out there if that was the case? I can tell you they don't, okay? Because this stuff has not largely been true. That has come out from the national media stuff and media sources. And I know that they're frustrated by it because what it's doing is it's instead creating a perception that they are in on guys, but don't do enough to get them. And like their whole thing is we're not even in on them, or at least not, like we can't be because of the second apron. And the DeRozan thing is an example today, Greg, where we went back to this at the beginning. Okay. Barry initially reported interest in DeRozan. I was skeptical of it because of things that I heard. I began to research it a little bit more and said, okay, there was interest in DeRozan. I reported that. I credited Barry for it. Barry and I have spoken. We did not have a duel or anything along those lines. Okay. They had interest in DeRozan, but at their number, okay, which at the time, before they made the move for Highsmith, was $5.2 million. They had this taxpayer mid-level, and if DeMar DeRozan was willing to accept that, he would be a member of the Miami Heat for that number. They were willing to give him that. They did speak to the Bulls about a sided trade and were told that the Bulls did not want their contracts. Then the report got out there that Sacramento was trying to get a third team involved. Ultimately, they did that and secured the player for what, $25 million a year? A lot more than $5.2 million a year. I don't have any evidence in my reporting, okay? And I could be wrong about this, okay? It's possible. I might find out later. I don't have any evidence in my reporting that the Heat were anywhere close to executing a sign and trade similar to what Sacramento did. Now, Greg, according to what Bobby reported today, and then it got parroted all over the place, okay, is that the Heat were essentially trying to dump Duncan Robinson, right, to clear up some space to make a move for DeRozan. I was told within like 30 seconds of that report coming out from 3 different people, like there's nothing to that. Now, are they just protecting Duncan Robinson? I guess you could say that would be their motive. Not make him feel bad. Duncan knows that he's been in trade talks, or at least considered in trade talks for the past 3-4 years. He's not stupid. So I don't even know why they would do that. And it just seems to me, Greg, like we've hit a point where if the organization is not more aggressive publicly about some of this stuff, and it's not Pat's way. I mean, Pat's the one who doesn't want them to engage in this. He's not the only one, but he's one of them, doesn't want them to engage in this stuff. But other people are going to fill in the gaps, and it's made for a very, very painful offseason for the Heat, I think.
It has, and this is really fascinating in that this the quiet approach that Miami has used to be met by the fans with like there was almost like a mystical element to it, like that there was stuff happening and you didn't realize what was going to go on, and then all of a sudden you deliver Shaquille O'Neal. Or you deliver the big 3 and all, the big 3, I think, is where this really kicked off because that's when the social media era started. And this is where I think we have to talk about how you evolve, because we are in a space where the hot takes fly immediately, no matter what. They're fast, they're furious. And then we're getting large groups of the fan base that are at least plugged in on social media that they all of a sudden are taking a point of view that's completely off base. And I just think that part of me thinks that they should remain quiet One, because we're the ones, we want everyone to come listen to this show to hear what's going on with the Heat. No, but in earnest, I think that even if they were to be upfront with the national media, I think a lot of these narratives would still exist. I think that there's a discontent element with the teams that don't make a lot of transactions. Fans, this is an era where fans love transactions. And so there's going to be restlessness when people are not seeing moves and the same team comes back. And so you just have to weather those storms. I don't think going to Woj or going to Shams or whatever would make this any different. Obviously, they're not going to hold a presser to shoot down rumors. So it's a situation where you got to rely on the local beat guys, and that's good. And I would say that you just you have to weather these storms. And I know that probably is a tough thing for fans to hear and even for the organization to go through. But then you have the periods where it's up and you probably want to keep stuff in-house and it stays in-house because of this philosophy.
Well, and there's a couple things on this. First thing, you talk about their approach and Shams and Woj and all this. Part of the reason that he don't get the benefit of the doubt, at least from an analytical perspective, is because they don't leak to the Nationals, and so as a result, it's a natural thing here. Okay, if you're a reporter, right, it's human nature. If you're a reporter and you have an organization that gives you a lot of stuff, okay, you are going to at least give them the benefit of the doubt more often so that information flow continues. Now, people are going to then throw that at me and they're going to say, well, you do that with the Heat. I report what they tell me. I don't necessarily always agree. Like it's different. Now, do I give them the benefit of the doubt? The benefit of the doubt I give them is not because I think I'm going to lose information or because I'm going to lose my credential. I mean, again, I've had the same credential since 1996. Okay, there's been a lot of reasons to pull my credential. Nobody's pulled it. So the reality is, I'm not concerned about that. But what I'm saying is that, I give them the benefit of the doubt because they're a good organization. Like when I covered the Dolphins for years in some of their regimes, okay, prior to McDaniel. Right. I did not give them the benefit of the doubt because they were not run by competent people. So, and there was no track record of competence. You haven't won a playoff game, again, various different regimes, same GM for about a lot of the years. But they haven't won a playoff game since December 30th, 2000. Okay, look, I mean, I'm going to give Bill Zito with the Panthers the benefit of the doubt next year and did this offseason because obviously the man knows what he's doing. So that's where it comes from for me. It's not a result of quid pro quo and all that. But I can tell you that with national guys, and we know this. This is an open secret to those of us who've worked, and I did work in the national space. I mean, I worked for Bleacher Report for 2 years as a national person. Okay, 14 and for the 13, 14, and 14, 15 seasons. And I know most of the national reporters very well. A lot of them are my friends. And I know how this operates. And even those who are most honest, most sincere, most objective, they get turned a little bit based on who's giving them information. And the Heat just don't do that with a lot of them. Okay, with some, a little bit, but not with a lot of them. And when they do it, largely they do it on deep background. And so it's not like, here, go with this, okay, or any of that. I can tell you that there are definitely general managers. I know some of them, I'm friendly with some of them, that literally do not care, okay, about it getting out and being traced back to them. They don't, okay? And it's just the way that they do business. And so I am beginning to wonder at this stage, the way that the Heat handle injuries, right? Which is just like this cloud, like the Terry Rozier.
That's frustrating.
Well, it is, but it's part of the same thing that I think is frustrating fans too, because it's like, okay, so Terry Rozier last year, okay, now I found out, okay, at this stage, and now that there was concern about making the injury worse and all the rest of that. That's totally reasonable. Like, why not just say that then? You see what I'm saying? And we'll get back to the Dion Waiters 6 to 8 weeks or the Justice Winslow thing where he was going to various specialists and wasn't getting the answer that he wanted. I mean, some of this is Hippocratic oath, not really. Some of it is just protecting, the player, protecting the training staff. not having it be a distraction. Some of it is what we've talked about, which is Spo's attitude, which is we have enough. Okay. And so you're not going to be talking about injuries all the time. I respect a lot of that stuff. I do think that occasionally it backfires. I do,
Yeah.
because it frustrates fans. They don't feel like they're getting like the straight scoop. Then they come down on us about it. And usually we do find out things after. I can find out everything that happened for the Big Three era now from those 4 years. Literally, I get all of it. At the time, I knew certain things. I knew like Mike Miller couldn't walk and was going for epidurals during the playoff series, and yet the organization was telling everybody he was fine. Okay, I know that Quentin Richardson, they'd said that there was nothing going on there with him, and then literally in the locker room after they lose to Boston in 2010, he's having surgery tomorrow. Like this is so it does become where honestly I just don't believe anything we're told publicly at this point. Okay, I have to clean it up separately, and for a fan like Greg, that's got to be very, very frustrating.
Yes, the injury thing specifically, it makes it, especially when it's little stuff like what you just mentioned about Terry Rozier. Although maybe it wasn't so little, considering it looks like he's just like getting back to rehab now, etc. With some of the workout videos I've seen, that's where we're at. Summer workout videos, but it does seem like the Heat sometimes take themselves too seriously with this stuff, and I think that helps when you're winning. And this is kind of the winning or misery motto. But when things are down, or when there's doubts, or when you're coming off, an 8 seed type season where you were early out, and then you don't change the team very much, people get, kind of in their feelings. And so I will say the injury thing though, and I know that they're all connected, but the injury thing really, I don't think that you gain that big of a competitive advantage. I think that it's probably overanalyzing that. And to me, it just seems like they sometimes take themselves too seriously there. That's where I draw the line. But maybe as a fan, I should, the line should be a little more blurry.
Well, and social media age has changed this, right? So look at what the national guys, and there's a bunch of national guys, but even the best national guys, and some of those who I think are actually the most trustworthy and objective, acknowledge at this point that the 90% of the news is going to two guys. That basically, and this is not just the NBA, by the way. It's also the NFL. The NFL is what? It's Rappaport and it's Schefter, and then occasionally like Glazer gets in there because he went to somebody's wedding. Like that's really, I mean, like seriously, like this what this is. And I know a lot of NFL information guys. Forget the locals. Okay, the locals are shut out all this stuff. Okay, it's incredibly frustrating for a lot in many markets. But like I know, like the national guy, like there are national guys who've just given up on it. Like they're not, they're just trying to do analysis because essentially just easier. The agents, I don't even know what the point is at this point. Like to just keep feeding to the same two guys in both sports. Like then the league might as well just announce it. Like you're basically just announcing it through people. That you're essentially doing favors for you. That's all this is. Okay. The Heat won't play this game. They won't play this game. Like they've never given special, and I appreciate that. They don't give special privileges. I've witnessed in the press room. Okay. One of those two guys, and he's the older of the two, because I can tell you this a few years ago, literally, okay, going at one of the PR guys who's been there who I have enormous respect for, has been there for, I guess, 25 years, or he's probably 25. No, yeah, he'll probably get angry at me for saying that. 25 years, because the Heat put him in the upper level. I've never been in the upper level. I don't know what it looks like, but they literally put him up there, and he's pulling a whole "don't you know who I am" thing in the middle of the press room. Okay, they don't give a damn. They don't. Now, are there other ways to present the information and fill in some of the gaps without having to go through those mechanisms that all these other teams are going through? Maybe. I mean, look, I remember the Harden thing, right? Right before the season a couple of years ago, we had information about their interest in Harden. I kind of felt like the Heat threw me under the bus because there was a text message that went out to the other beat guys, okay, shooting down anything related to Harden. Like I literally posted it on Twitter, like the meme of like Cartman going under a bus. Okay. And so there are ways to kind of get out in front of this, and their media relations staff is outstanding. Okay, I mean, I they've, and again, it's 30 years being led by the same person, and so that's not what this is. It's an organizational philosophy that it's really that it really is. It should just be a T-shirt. It's none of your fucking business.
Mm-hmm. You know,
Okay.
a lot of their philosophies are being challenged right now by the fan base. The way that they handle assets, the way that they give out contracts. You know how many people I've seen talk about Caleb Martin's 5 for 60 or 65 or whatever that was, being negative about that and saying, I can't believe they offered that to him. So you're seeing, I just think that there's negative headspace in Heat fandom right now. And so it's amplifying all this stuff. But I will say, it's a good time to trust your local guys instead of your national guys, as for those listening to this. And I don't think that they should change their philosophy. I just don't think that it's going to change the narrative that much. I think that people know who to go to when they want to hear Heat information that they trust. And so let's just keep it that way.
Well, like I said, it in some ways it's advantageous to us. So I'm not complaining about it. I'm asking the question, whether or not it's benefiting them. And let's close the loop on it on the other side of this. But I do want to mention a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. It's PrizePicks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. PrizePicks.com. Again, the official fantasy sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. You can play a lineup up to 4 players. I know that we don't have NBA or NHL right now, but there is MLB, PGA, lots of stuff on there, and Summer League as well. Of course, yeah, I know you got to be a degenerate, but I guess I am one because I've been doing it. Use the code 5 FIVE. Get that initial deposit matched up to $100. So let's address the rumor itself, I guess. And again, like this, I keep coming back to this. Like, this is not Bobby Marks is about as straight a shooter as you get in these situations. So somebody gave him information, but for me to get 3 texts within 30 seconds saying it's total BS, and then again it gets telephone gamed, okay, and now we're at a point where the perception is that Duncan Robinson has no value, right?
Yeah. And Tyler Hero, because everyone assumes that they would have done whatever they did with Duncan about going around and seeing if you could dump his contract, that they would do something similar maybe with Tyler. They've kind of been grouped together that way. And so, but because Duncan Robinson was specifically mentioned by more than one person, there is some, I guess, quote unquote, damage control, although Duncan's a vet at these trade rumors. He's been through it. But I don't think that they would shoot it down to like protect his psyche, because I think, for one, that's not how they operate. But 2, Duncan is a professional, man. He's been through this shit. He doesn't need them to like come out and say, no, we weren't looking to dump a contract. I think you could just look at their cap sheet, and if you can do math, you probably should have explored what it would have cost to drop to get rid of a contract, to shed one. And I guess that my guess is that attaching assets is not in the picture right now. And so that's just where we're at right now. So I think there's also dot connection that takes place, particularly with agents. And that's, who's feeding some of this national narrative.
Yeah, they want to stay in the mix, and they want to do favors for writers. This happens all the time. Sometimes I'll hear from agents I haven't heard from in a while, and I can tell that they want a favor for their client later on. And so they'll give me something that's totally unrelated to their player. But then when I actually need something related to their player, nobody's texting me back. Like, this is the kind of game, again, that goes on. And I'm not a big time national guy, okay, but like I said, I was in the national space for a couple of years. I did a lot of feature work. I was essentially the LeBron writer for Bleacher Report. That's why I got shipped up to Cleveland in the second year. But I mean, the Duncan thing, like, is again, let's just go back to the core of this, okay? Were the Heat really interested in giving 3 years and roughly $75 million to a 34-year-old who does a lot of the same things that Jimmy Butler does? And
No.
The answer to that, right, was no. And honestly, some of the same people, okay, who, again, and I love some of you guys dearly. It's not like I'm trying to avoid. I just don't want to get into specific names on this, but some of those who drive Heat Twitter and drive this narrative, okay, about, again, they're not going to do anything. There's one person in particular who I'm friends with who literally was tweeting out, "You do not give DeMar DeRozan a 3-year contract." Like, he was tweeting that out incessantly. You know what I'm talking about. And he was tweeting that out, and then all of a sudden they don't get him, and we didn't get somebody again. And it's like, it just seems like it is engagement farming to a certain degree, right? And
can't knock the hustle, but it does present
Right.
an issue for the Heat when they're trying to then try to control the narrative.
Right, like, okay, you didn't want him at this contract. The Heat really didn't want him at this contract. What are we talking about here? You know what I mean? So now it's just become, well, your assets suck, and now it's your fault for signing them to those contracts. Okay, well, but you weren't really trying to move them. At least I don't believe so. Okay, look, maybe someone will correct me, and 3 different people involved who would know are all lying to me. And that it would not be the first time, maybe for 1, but for 3, at the same time, I don't know. And if that's the case, then, like, why would people lie to me about this specifically when they're going to come back to me later with information and then have me question it, when, again, to a certain degree, they're trying to have me clean up things that they believe not to be true. Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, again, no, I mean, I've been played for a fool before, trust me, in many areas of my life, but I don't know. I just think people have to think logically about this stuff. And it just seems like, again, coming back to the beginning of this episode, we thank our sponsors. Check out the link for Valvoline and PrizePicks. Use the code 5. We wanted to address this because it just does seem, to a certain degree here, that what's happened is people don't know how to talk about the Heat, so they just fill in a bunch of bullshit. Like, that's and I've said that before about the analysis of the team and all the rest of this. There are 4 or 5 beat writers who cover the team regularly, do a very excellent job in different ways. I'm not a beat writer. I'm around a lot. I've known a lot of these people for 25 years, okay, and more.
You count.
I mean, I sometimes, okay, but I just, it's been a lot this offseason. It's been a lot. I will get back to basketball tomorrow, but we just wanted to riff on this. Everybody have a good night.